Well, here we are live in our digital detox training today. It is so good to have you with me today. One of the things that I've learned along the way is that there are so many things about our life that we often don't pay attention to when we are really just trying to figure out life, right? And one of those things that we don't pay attention to, in my experience, has often been the fact that we are so busy with our life that we don't recognize how we need to sometimes detox from things that are happening in my world. And again, it's so good to have you with me today. My name is Dan Clark. I'm a life coach, been doing this for a number of years now, worked with thousands of people over the years. And as I begin to think about detoxing from the digital process that all of us are in, I recognize that there's a large need for understanding about how to detox off of our digital data. We are doing those all kinds of things in our bodies where we will detox from different types of things like going on fasts, or how we do that with the way that we think about our taking care of our bodies. But there's a way that we can do that with our minds that can sure make a lot of difference in how we actually are, again, experiencing the world. One of the things that happens in my world is that sometimes it's hard to talk about the things that we're addicted to. And when we're addicted to something, none of us want to really admit that or own that. We all have habits that we would like to move away from. And you know exactly what I mean. Like maybe it's the habit of driving really fast, or the habit of sugar, or a Diet Coke, or whatever those things are that we feel like that we deserve. We all have those things that we do. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about how to actually move away from those types of habits. Now, today, wherever you're at and whatever you're doing, I want you to be aware of that you have energy or habits or patterns on the inside of you that demand that they be met, that they just need to be met at some level. We all have them. And whatever those needs are, they always work around or run around some of the things that we really, really feel like that we need to make us feel good. We give ourselves all kinds of room, like, well, we make I don't know what you said, that we make all kinds of excuses for, well, that's just how I was, or I didn't mean to be that way, or I didn't mean to say that, or I wish I could change that about myself, or yes, I know I need to change that about myself. I was spending some time with my sister a while back, a couple weekends ago, and she was reminding me of a habit or a pattern that shows up consistently in my world. And I find that entertaining at some point, because it's kind of true, right? Even though I'm super healthy emotionally, but I'm not always aware of the ways that I always am. But there's some things that don't need to change, right? But there's those things that I know that I really want to change that are really hard to change. And anytime that we're going to detox or move away from those things, the first thing that we need to focus on is not about what we need to do, but why we are doing the behavior. Not what we need to stop, but why that behavior shows up in our world. The way that I look at this is to think about our current culture in the United States. There are millions and millions of books about how to eat healthy and how to exercise and have great relationship with your children or your family or your parents, how to be a great parent. Just about anything you could think of. There's a ton of information about how to be really good at everything. But we are one of the most unhealthy nations, have the highest divorce rate, and a lot of other things we know that are true. Most of that is related to we want to learn, we want to understand, and we want to do. When in reality, if we practice paying attention to what's happening below our neck, in our body itself, then that's where real transformation happens, and real change, where change really happens. I mean, powerful change. Change that can really motivate everyone around you, noticing that you truly are a different person. I know from my own experience a number of years ago, and I can even tell you the day that I actually stopped watching TV. And one of the reasons that that was true for me was because I chose, again, to stop watching TV, because I recognized that at some point there wasn't any way that I ever was going to get anything from watching TV. And so now I do not. That means that where I'm currently in the space that I live, I have a TV that's in a closet, and I'll get it out maybe to watch a movie once in a while, but I don't have a TV on because it was so consuming of the energy that I have. And I didn't want to be always in that space where I either had to turn the news on or had to have something on in the background. And I'm not suggesting that that's something that you do, but I'm suggesting that when I recognized that I had a difficulty with something, that's how I dealt with it. And that's because I really have always been an information junkie, particularly when it meets a deep need that I have. And that need is to kind of know what's going on in the world, like watching the news, which is where I really had difficulties, always figuring out that there was something else up there that I wanted to pay attention to and I wanted to listen to, or something that would maybe potentially bring me some information so I felt protected and safe as long as I was in the know. When in reality, I was just curious and afraid, and my fear seemed to go away when I was in the know. But actually, it didn't help me any, because that in the know, or that news, was really making me more sad or depressed or unhealthy or unhappy, and that just doesn't working for me. So if you're going to take notes, I'd like you to be thinking about this. The idea here is to be noticing what it is that you're doing when you know that you're spending too much time on the information highway. You know, when you're spending too much time collecting data, or looking at Facebook, or looking at TikTok, or doing time on WhatsApp, or doing time on, I forget some of those other ones, come out on them, like Instagram. There's a couple others on there. When you catch yourself stuck in those moments, there's really something that you actually are wanting instead of doing that. And I want to introduce an idea to you for just a moment that I think is pretty powerful. You and I were built for connection with others. Every one of us was built to have connections that are meaningful and valuable with others. And the number one reason that I was disconnected from my world was because I didn't feel like anyone cared about me. So in order to make that feeling go away, I would get caught up in watching TV and or doing YouTube or doing Instagram, or other things that I was doing in the past. And that's because I just had this hole inside me that wanted to have that hole filled. We do know that as you think about TikTok, as it's become very popular, that they did this 1 minute, 2 minute, and 3 minute kind of videos where it was just a lot of high level energy and dopamine and cortisol that's going on the inside of us. And this dopamine high made us feel like it was new and exciting. And so that means that our attention span was always in this high level of addiction. And so TikTok became a very popular program because it fulfills this need of feeling alive, when in reality, we want someone who is actually alive to connect with. We want to actually feel like we're doing something that is connecting with a person that knows us and sees us, instead of just gathering information. As our world has fallen apart and we don't have the family connections, and we're much more mobile than we used to be, and kind of in our own little silos, it really becomes more difficult to learn how to connect on a healthy way, because we don't see that a lot, not only in our way that we're raised, but our culture doesn't do that a lot, more individuals as opposed to the group. I'm saying that because as you think about why you're doing any type of consistent digital activities that you want to get away from, my question would be, why? What is it that you really want? Well, it's very similar to any type of an addiction. When you notice someone who goes to alcohol or drug addiction, or goes to any type of addiction program, one of the first things they talk about is not about stopping the behavior, even though that's why they're there. They want to stop the behavior, but what motivates the behavior in the first place. Again, often it is because there's a need on the inside of us that we want to be met, to get met, and it's only met through something other than a person. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. But if you don't really feel like there's anyone to connect with, then we go to the other thing, which is obviously the activities of doing things online with our phone or with our computer, or hiding out. Now, some people read a lot, and some people may do other kind of things that they know that are habits. And I want to, again, acknowledge the fact that we all have habits that we'd like to break. But when a habit becomes addiction, then it means that we are overusing that particular activity to avoid really feeling alive and connecting with others. I'm starting out talking about this because I want to establish that no matter what it is that we talk about that you can do different, no matter how it is that we begin to structure things that you can do to move away from the activities that you want to stop, they mean nothing because they become just this hard work to not do that, when in reality, what you really want is to connect with someone. You want to feel like someone listens to you and hears you, and you want to feel important and seen and heard. And when we feel like that the person isn't really going to be there and they don't really care and they don't really know us, then we're just going to go to whatever it is activity that we can feel seen and heard and understood, or kind of get our ears to be fulfilled with things that make us like we're learning something or engaged in something that, again, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't really matter, but what we are doing, again, is avoiding connections with someone who's really real. I know in my own life, if you're in my personal world, you'll notice that I often will give a text or a call or a shout out to someone when I'm feeling like I want to, and I want to feel connected with someone. Now, I love my time alone, but also I'm recognizing that when I'm in those spaces and I catch myself beginning to lean into that behavior that I really don't want to do, like spending too much time on TikTok or spending too much time trying to fix my website or working on a project that really isn't going anywhere, or just menial things that don't really matter, that are digital in particular. We're talking specifically about digital today. That means that I'm really avoiding that connection. So sometimes I'll do a shout out or say, how are you? Or what's up with you? And whether that person responds or not, sometimes doesn't matter to me. Sometimes it does. I appreciate when they do. I have a couple of guys in my world and I'm like, hey, what are you doing today? I'm like, really not a whole lot. And that's where that goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's me reaching out to kind of solve that, right? Or the other opportunity that I would do is I'll just go shopping, or I don't ever spend any money when I go shopping, but I'll just go walk through the stores when I don't have anything else to do, so that I feel like I'm connecting with the real world. Or I make a phone call. I do that often, do a FaceTime with my granddaughter or my daughter, my children, and just my grandson, and spend time just, again, connecting at some level. So when you're noticing that you're stuck into an addiction or in a behavior that you don't want to be doing, particularly digital, what is it that you really want? Most of us don't know. I'm suggesting it's because you need a connection with a live person. There's a book out there called Soft Addictions by Judith Wright, and she has a wonderful way of explaining how we get into these soft addictions based on the way that we are just simply avoiding connection with others. And it may be a good read for you. And what she talks about is the desire that we have to be in a relationship with others, and it gets broken over and over and over again, puts us in this space where we just withdraw. And then late at night or early in the morning, or when we have free time, just to kind of be in no man's land or doing nothing, what we're really doing is we're just disconnecting from the world. Now, there are times when we do need to disconnect from the world. Like, I love being outside, and that's the most beautiful way that I can really feel alive, by doing and working in my yard or whatever it is that I have to do outside. I love being outside, but that's not a disconnect necessarily, because I'm doing something that's not mindless activity. And mindless activity is where, again, we get stuck in those addictions. There are many problems that show up when we are in the digital addiction mode. And some of those we know that are always true. It prevents us from sleeping well. It can motivate dreams that we really are uncomfortable with. It can validate some fears that we have, because we may look at things that are like scary things that are going on in the world. Or it may just be entertainment for us at some point, because we just really want to be entertained. But the evidence of doing a lot of digital obviously is sleep problems, eye strain. There are some mental health concerns because we withdraw from the world a lot. And that really develops, again, this idea that we're all alone, and we're not all alone. I've worked with multiple individuals who have struggled with working on addictions and habits. And one of the first things that we talk about when they get into the digital side, or even alcohol or smoking or whatever it is they want to move away from, we focus on what is the real thing that they want and the connection, and learning how to step into a relationship for just a moment, like seeking someone out to say hello, or leaning into that idea that you can say hello to someone in the evening, or you can find something to do that's an alternative way to connect with something that's real in real life. Like, again, when we are catching ourselves in that soft addiction, or even if it's a hard addiction, I mean, it's something that's really overwhelming, like spending hours and hours in digital. When we feel alive, we move away from those things. So there are some other things that we can actually do that are pretty healthy. Now, the deterioration of the family that you're in or your work life is also pretty evident, because mindless activity means that you don't remember as well, you become more irritable, less emotionally reactive, or more emotionally reactive, more sensitive to words that are being said to you. You know, the energy that we don't let go of, or the energy that we absorb, affects who we are. So our productivity, our ability to be present and alive and to feel like people care about us, all begins to go away when we're spending way too much time in excessive watching digital media, no matter what level that is. And one of the ways that we begin to get away from that is to begin to, again, notice. It's called catching ourselves in the middle of this. Had a wonderful conversation with a young man. He's around 24, and oh my gosh, we've been working together for about a year and a half, and he showed up one time for his time with me, and he was just distraught. He was like, I just really want this behavior to go away, Dan. And as we were talking about it, we moved into the emotional drama that he feels on the inside of him, which is called shame and guilt. And he would beat himself up so much for the way that he was behaving, and he hated himself. And why did he do that? Spend so much time, watching these, being on the internet, watching whatever that was. I think it was TikTok and some other things he was doing. And he got stuck into YouTube often, and just mindless activity. And what we talked about was recognizing that it's nothing wrong with starting the behavior, because often we're going to get started. But when he caught himself, instead of being so negative, I was encouraging him to say, wow, check that out. I'm doing that again. Wow, I don't need to be doing that. And be kind of above it, and just simply stop the behavior and do something else. Well, we figured out what it was he could do next, what something else he could do, which was beautiful, because he worked nights, so it was usually during the day, and he would go outside. He'd bought a motorcycle. He would go ride his motorcycle, or he would go talk to his neighbor, or he'd call his brother. He has a great relationship with his brother. Or he would just do something that was different. He loves to read, so he'd pick up a book, but he had a plan. And this is the thing that I want you to be thinking about for yourself, is that when you catch yourself, one of the first things that I want you to be focusing on is thinking, oh, wait, this is what I'm doing. And then instead of like, oh, my goodness gracious, why am I doing this, and being in shame and guilt about it, I want you to be thinking about, hey, wait, I just need to do something different so I feel more alive, instead of being pulled into something that really isn't the feeling of being alive. And I want you to write down, what are some of the things that you can do? Go outside, drink some water, and start reading a book. I don't know, journal, do a different media, like maybe watch an actual movie, read something that's interesting to you, or just have a light conversation with yourself. Journaling is really a good idea. If you can go outside, I would love for you to do that, or change the media that you're watching for just a short time. But when you catch yourself, I want you to have a plan for what is the alternative that you can do, right? Now, the reason that, even though we'll talk about this in a moment, the reason that we're not going to specifically talk about things that you can do to really move away from that, I'm wanting to encourage you to notice that everything that you do that is addiction related, or that you are caught up in digital media for a long time, it is nothing more than emotions that you haven't really connected with that are showing up on the inside of you. That's all that we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you are wanting internally something that you want to get somewhere, and any mindless activity makes that numbness go away. Okay. And that numbness doesn't really go away. We just become more numb, right? Now, the idea that there are triggers that connect us with digital media is also something that's very powerful to be aware of. I don't know what your triggers are. If you're taking notes, what do you think that they might be for you? Write down what you think your triggers are. Is it when you're alone, it's late at night, you get into an argument with a close friend or an intimate person in your life, or something happens with your children or your grandchildren, or job isn't going well, or money's tight, or, I don't know, you just begin to get sad because circumstances aren't going really well. You got a bad review at work, or you didn't have enough money for something, or something disappointed you. As soon as there's a negative emotion on the inside of us that we don't want to address, or maybe even if it's just the week isn't going well, or you're just really tired, then you lean into, I just want to make myself feel better. And so we get into the addiction. So the idea of what are the triggers would be be aware of what are your triggers, noticing them in advance. Triggers could be that you're just really tired. When I'm really tired, I'll go for a bowl of ice cream. Not the same thing, but it is kind of an addiction for me, or some form of sugar late at night. And I seldom do a lot of digital in the evening. But when you catch yourself in the digital, when you catch yourself spending a more abnormal amount of time, as I mentioned earlier, to catch yourself, and when you catch yourself and go, oh, I don't need to be doing this right now, being lightweight about it, again, try not to beat yourself up. But at that moment, maybe you could notice what was the trigger, what was the pattern that took you to that. So the next time that you notice that you start, you can actually move away from it. Because if you're what you're aware of, you can actually change. And if you're not aware of, then it's more difficult to stop a behavior if you're not aware of when it's starting. Mindless activity, we all do. We all have those places we are simply just being mindless, right? We are just in automatic. And what happens when we are in that automatic is we are, again, moving into whatever behaviors that help that automatic continue in the patterns that we're in. Now, we're going to transition here for just a second because I want to talk about what it is that we can do for a strategy to be very specific about moving away from digital information that isn't successful for us. Because as you are learning how to be aware of what you need to do different, then we need to also be aware of how we want to feel and rewarding ourselves in some way by saying thank you and attaboy when we actually do really, really well. Often we don't know what that's like. We don't know how to do that to ourselves and congratulate ourselves on how well we are doing and how much we love ourselves and catching ourselves and not doing the bad behavior. When you are when you think about a child, and I love working with, I don't work with anyone under 10, but I love working with children, particularly, or even young adults, because they often, are so caught up in all the things that they're doing that they don't really think about someone else a whole lot. But as we get older, we think more and more about ourselves. But if you really think about how we are when we're children, if you look at a 3, 4, or 5-year-old, they're going to draw a picture for you on a piece of paper, or they're going to color a picture for you or with you, and they're going to say, wait, look at this. Isn't this just beautiful? This is the pig or the frog or the horse or the house that I drew. And you're going to say, that might not be, it's not, that's a pretty, it's a very beautiful horse. And you're thinking, I've not seen a horse like that, but it is a pretty horse. Children ask for compliments because that structures on the inside of them who they really are, and learning that it's okay to be imperfect, but they're still being accepted for who they are, right? And this happens early on. And when that acceptance or validation of what they're doing is okay, even though it's not perfect, then that teaches us as an adult to be okay with asking for and needing compliments. Now, we all know people who are super needy and kind of arrogant about, look at me, and we're not talking about that. What I am talking about is the fact that, do you give yourself compliments? Do you say, I did such a good job at that? I mean, I love this idea, and I practice this, and I actually teach this also did you see how well I ran that yellow light? I ran that yellow light and it didn't turn red on me yet. No, I got there and before it turned red. I did a good job with that, right? Now, I'm kind of making somewhat fun and being lightweight about it, but it is true. I am enjoying the fact that I got through that because there was no one around to catch me, right? And so I'm giving myself a compliment, but that's understanding how compliments work, right? When I have a really good day and I love mowing my yard, I love working outside, and I've been doing some things in my backyard, and, I'll take a picture of it and send it to you because, oh, look how this looks. And please tell me that you like it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But little boys love those kind of compliments even more than little girls at some point, even though men as adults need compliments a lot. And if we don't get them, it doesn't work for us. Even it's weird how men like compliments. And if we don't practice complimenting ourselves often enough, not in an arrogant way, but saying, I did a good job at that, then when we are having failures or we catch ourselves doing something that we're not wishing that we hadn't been doing, like getting stuck in digital, online, whatever we're doing, if we can't say, oh, I did such a good job of stopping that, then we're not living the kind of life that we could live inside ourselves to change who we are. So practicing complimenting yourself is an important process here. I know this is different than just the logistics of A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3 to get away from that, because we can talk about that all day, about setting goals and time frames and turn on your timer and only doing it for 10 minutes. And we'll talk about that maybe in a moment. But I'm getting to the deeper part of why you behave the way you do is sometimes unknown to you. And again, it's because you don't know how to give yourself compliments. At this stage, it's like, yeah, I did. I was caught up in TikTok for 20 minutes, and I kind of liked the fact that I stopped before I went an hour, and that was wonderful. I did such a good job with that. And if I'm going to add to that, though, I want you to notice how you don't give yourself compliments about anything. And why not? Didn't you do a great job in driving to work? Didn't you love how you just parked your car? And didn't you put the shopping cart away perfect? And look at the way that you dressed and how you combed your hair perfect. And those shoes matched what you were wearing today so well. And you are proud of that. And even though you don't have to necessarily say something to someone else, you are saying it to you because you like you. You do, and you want to like you, but you have to practice liking you in order for it to work. Again, we're talking about this because this is how addictions go away, by liking you and being okay with the things that you like about you. Oh, those shoes don't match. And you know what? I parked crooked again. And oh my gosh, I've got to learn to slow down on the way to work. And I don't know, it's always like things never go the way I want them to. I never get a break on anything. And every time I see a police officer, I just got to be very careful, right? All those language patterns that we have inside us are nothing more than experiences that we've had in the past. And learning to change them is learning to compliment myself about what I'm doing, even to the point of complimenting myself on the things I didn't do well. Like I mentioned earlier, I only did 30 minutes of TikTok today. Wow, that was great. I love that, right? As opposed to, oh no, I did so much that I didn't want to do so much TikTok today. I didn't want to, right? And nothing wrong with that, but we're trying to avoid being highly negative on who we are because we want to focus on who we can be and the skills that we are learning, which is to like ourselves, to be more likable. I mentioned complimenting yourself. You can even compliment yourself on the negative things that you do, which is why I was talking about a minute ago, running a yellow light. Now, let's don't run red lights, but, squeeze through that yellow light because you can. Oh, my goodness, I don't do that as much as I used to because I'm a little older now. When I was a younger man, I'm like, let's hurry up and get through there, right, because I'm in a hurry. But if you practice even complimenting yourself on the negative things, again, what's this have to do with digital detox? A lot, because you're stuck in a pattern of not feeling alive. And when you feel this deadness inside you, you just do dead activities. But aliveness is owning what's actually happening in the moment and sharing it with someone and saying, check this out. I did park my car. I was at a store a while back, and this person in front of me was walking along, and I was walking along behind them. And when they turned the corner, they stopped suddenly, and I actually ran into them with my cart. Ooh, right? And I usually say, I'm sorry, whatever. I said, I think I did that intentionally because I wasn't paying attention. And he laughed at me. And he said, yeah, that happens every once in a while. I said, yeah, I'm kind of a bad kid once in a while. I drive my car just like I'm driving my cart. So I was doing some other activity when you stopped in front of me. So it was intentional instead of like an accident. And then we laughed and I said, well, I really didn't mean to. And he said, I know, right? So what did I do? I owned it, right, as aliveness, and we had a little bit of a connection, and it went away from that, right? And then again, we're focusing on connecting with what's happening. And the more that you connect along the day with others, and in little bitty ways, the feeling of aliveness happens more often. Now, I don't know what you do for a living, and it can be pretty boring, and it can be difficult, and you could have the most difficult job in the world or have a really easy job, but if you don't feel alive in your job, and you're not really connecting at some level with someone in what you're doing for a living, then you can feel kind of dead even there, right? And so having quality conversations with someone, for example, feeling aliveness is like when you're at the water fountain, as we would say, when you say, hey, how are you? Don't move away from that conversation. If you really want to move away from addictions inside you, the feeling of aliveness would be saying, I saw you here a little while ago and I came over to say hello, and it's so good to see you, and you look great today. And thank you for being such a good worker. And I really like working with you. And then you walk away. Learning how to connect with others is learning how to feel alive. And I promise this helps moving away from the idea that no one cares about us, because we're learning how to care for others and be intentional in having those conversations that are very important and powerful in helping us feel alive. Like saying sincerely, not like, hello, how are you? It's how are you? If we want to move away from that language, we can say, I see you and you look great. I love watching you walk in the door at work. You just come in bouncing in like you're alive. See, when we observe and notice what we're thinking about someone and how much we appreciate and validate who they are in us, and to us, and for us, and with us, then we actually can create the feeling of aliveness and this feeling of connection. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out conversation, but leaning into those connections is so valuable for us being alive and connected with the reality that everyone wants to feel seen. And when you see someone for who they are in just the moment, instead of noticing that their shoes don't match and they're always late, or they didn't comb their hair today, or yep, he didn't button his shirt again. When we don't do those things and we think about the fact that they show up even if they're late, and we compliment them or we say to them what we love about them in just a light way, there's this energy that it gets exchanged. It's called positivity resonance, which means that we are connecting with them in a very positive way because we actually truly love what we see. And if we start loving what we see, we will start loving ourselves, which again is feeling alive and connectedness. I hope you're gathering what we're talking about here, because we're moving into this idea that it isn't just about trying to making sure that we have some goals and some rules that we're following to make sure that we don't do the bad behavior again, even though we might need to do that for a while. But if we feel alive, we're less likely. Now let's talk about some goals that we might need to have and some ways that we can kind of work through this. You know, the danger about saying, oh, I can do this for just a few minutes. I promise I can stop doing so much digital. I'll just make sure that I'll do this for just a little while. I mean, just once, it's okay to sit here for just a few minutes and, look at Instagram or TikTok. It's okay to do that for just a few minutes, right? No, it's not. Because once you start thinking that way, what happens? You get caught up in it. I'm in a large group of individuals that are working on a program. We're all in the same plan, and we're all in this for the same reason. And in this group, I was noticing one of these ladies kept saying, oh, but I just so enjoyed watching these particular TikToks. And she said, I get caught up into it for 3 or 4 hours. And my husband and I just love looking at them and watching them. And she said, they're just so entertaining. And I was thinking in the moment, well, you're in a meeting with a bunch of business owners, and that seems like a lot of wasted time to be growing your business, right? And the person that was leading the group actually mentioned to her that, maybe she could be better at that. And she said, well, I really want to, but I really don't want to because I just enjoy it so much. Okay, let's go there for a second. This young lady might need to have a goal of just 20 minutes a day, and then she would stop, right? So when you catch yourself where it's not only pleasure seeking, but also something that you want because it's entertaining, if I'm going to do it for just a little bit, then I need a time limit, right? Now, I live my life for the most part in time blocks, which means I do time sections, which means I do things in time blocks. So if you really want to catch yourself and help promote that habit of being aware, every time that you start doing any type of digital stuff, to make a conscious note that you're going to stop, and however long you want to go. I think 20 minutes is way too long sometimes, but make sure that you have a conscious amount of time that you're going to be doing it in, right? That you actually are moving away from the idea that you can do it for a really long time. So set a time limit. That's one of the most important goals in learning how to teach your body and mind how to stop, right? That's one of the best ways to do that. Another way is to have someone that's around you or with you say, well, when you catch me doing this, or when I'm starting this, would you please help me stop this, right? Or I guess I didn't mean help me, but I meant to tell me I'm going to stop in 20 minutes. Come check on me in 20 minutes, right? There's this weird thing called social accountability. And when we are in social accountability, what that means is when you make a dinner date with someone, you are more likely to show up at that dinner date because it's social accountability. You're not going to be late, right? No, you're not going to be late. No, you're going to be there on time for coffee, right? Or work or whatever it is that you're supposed to show up for. That's why social accountability works. Well, if you're struggling with internet use, then make yourself social accountable. I have done this in my life in the past, don't do it so much now, but when I would meet with my friends for breakfast consistently, I would share how well I did from the last time we met to the current time we met. And they weren't holding me accountable, but I was just simply holding myself accountable. I would say that, well, I said to you I would be doing these 4 things in the last 2 weeks. We eat breakfast about every 2 weeks on Friday. And then Friday morning, goodness gracious, breakfast at Friday morning with your 2 best friends, there's nothing like that whatsoever, right? They're older than I am, and these guys got so much wisdom, but we're so much alike, right? What's kind of entertaining about that is that, we're all in different areas of life, and we all have different relationships, and we all do different things for a living. But there's so many things that are common about us, and they enjoy me because I'm pretty open about what's going on in my world for the most part. But I was sharing things like, and they never did this with me, but I was sharing things like, well, I made sure I was doing this. I was working on this project, and I got this one done. I got that done, and I didn't get this one done, but I got this one done, right? And I'm very happy about that, but I can be better at that. And I shared some relationship stuff too with them. And what that did is it helped me internally be accountable, but they didn't ever say I could do that better. They didn't give me any advice. It's just my willingness to show up and say, this is what I'm doing. That's a great way to hold yourself socially accountable for what you're actually doing. But here's the problem with that, is that, and this is where it gets difficult, if you are ever in a space where you're willing to mislead or to not always tell the truth or be open about what's really happening with you, nope, doesn't work. Secrets are the most difficult energy to break. And if you have secrets about your digital time, if you are not being truthful about it, if you can't be really, really bravely truthful about how much time you spend, then, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's that you're spending time at it, then it doesn't work. Oh, I didn't mean to, and it was just 30 minutes. I meant to do 15, doesn't work. It's owning it is like, being truthful about it is like, yep, I did 2 hours before I went to bed on Saturday night because I was really super tired and I got sucked into it and I couldn't get out, right? Okay. Just owning it without an excuse, without defending it, without an excuse, just own it. And that will help a whole lot in moving into a state of not wanting to do it in the future. So if you have a friend where you can share what you're doing and hold yourself accountable, again, they're not holding you accountable. You're holding yourself accountable by sharing with them what it is that you want to see different about you, and you're just telling them how well you're doing. It's just you're sharing. But if they give you feedback, that makes the relationship really tough, right? And if they're sharing about what they're doing and you're trying to compare, that doesn't work either. Not that they can't share with you. But this is a difficult place to be, because often, when you're sharing something about yourself, next thing you know, someone in your world is like, yeah, this is what you should do, and you could try that. And, I'm okay with that with my friends, but for the most part, if I want something from them, I'll ask, right? And I'll remind them that I didn't ask for their advice. And the reason I say that to you is because don't get in the space of giving people advice that they're not asking you for. Don't do that. That's why relationships aren't really healthy. You just love them for who they are, right? If you feel like that you want to say something to them about how much time they're spending on the internet or in too much media content, yeah, just share with them that they could do better, and you leave it at that, right? But let someone else help them with them. You help them with that. You be their friend, right? And then you ask them to be your friend, which is just to hear you admit how well you did. Oh my gosh, I did so well. I only did 30 minutes a night. It was so beautiful. Or at my break at work, I took only just 10 minutes of my 30-minute break, and stuck in this media, I only did what I wanted to, right? And then the other part about being accountable would be sharing how many people you talk to, or how people that you didn't know, So the social accountability works really, really well. So we talked about a couple of things here, and I want to recap real quick. One of the things we talked about is that we're built for connection. That means that you and I are built to connect with people. And often when we are spending too much time in media, it's because we really don't feel loved or cared for, important, you can break that up any way that you want to. When someone says, well, that's not true. Well, it is true, because if you didn't have it, you'd be doing something different, right? If you didn't have the media available, if you didn't have something to be mindless activities, you wouldn't be doing that, right? So recognizing that whatever it is, the excuse that you make, you really want to connect with someone. But it can be a 2-second connect, a 5-second connect. It can be a 5-minute connect. But the more that you reach out to connect with someone, the more, especially when you catch yourself in some type of media, it's about connecting with someone. So as you catch yourself wanting to lean into it, just catch yourself feeling like you want to start doing it, find something to do where you can connect with someone. The second thing we talked about is that maybe it's an alternative would be like going for a walk, or going outside, or reading a book, or doing alternative activity. And when you're in that space, that means that you are actually breaking the pattern that's there, right? The other thing we talked about is your willingness to really give yourself compliments and build your own self-esteem. Thinking about how wonderful it would be if you begin to say how wonderful you did when you did this great project and you did so well at it, and also owning the fact that I spent too much time on digital this time, too much time on media this week, but I'm okay with that because I'm learning how to not do that, right? Not getting into shame or guilt, but just owning it and owning it up front. And giving myself compliments about how well I'm doing about things that aren't related to digital, right? Like how well I drove my car, or how well I dressed, or how I feel about myself, or how well I did on a project I work at work, or when I did something at the house, and just owning it. And like, did you see how clean my bathroom was, right? Or whatever those silly things are. I mean, we all have a different way of wanting to give compliments or get them. And so the other thing we talked about is practicing giving compliments too, and leaning into that, and paying attention to being just lightweight about what's happening. And the last thing we talked about is soft addictions, being aware of that. Soft addictions are simply meaning that we have habits that kind of revolve around the inside of us, and we somewhat kind of avoid things when we are in a soft addiction because we are hiding out. The last thing we talked about was social accountability. And this is not necessarily the most difficult part, but it's also a very important part, recognizing that social accountability simply means that I'm willing to trust a friend with who I really am. And it doesn't have to be really vulnerable. You don't have to be sharing any of the negative stuff. Just share what you want, but be willing to share. Just like showing up for a coffee date or a dinner date or whatever, for just spending time with them because you want to have breakfast with them. It's the same. You're just sharing. And asking them not to hold you accountable for it because you're holding yourself accountable for it. Oh my gosh, if you're taking notes, I love the fact that you are learning a lot about yourself, and that I hope this is a very valuable part of understanding the importance of who we are as human beings, and our recognition about the internal part of us drives so much of who we are. I love the fact that you spent this time with me, and it's been fun for me. I have truly enjoyed spending this time with you. And as always, there is always the next space. If you find yourself in a place and in a pattern of doing things that you have a hard time breaking, I really would love you to seek out help from someone. Now, I'm always available. The best place and the best way to get a hold of me is danielcclark.me. That's my calendar online, danielcclark.me, M-E. You can get a hold of me there. I would love to be involved in your world if there's things that you're working through, or you can go to my website. It's Transformed Life. That's transformed, EDLIFE.net. I would love to have you in my world if there's something I can do for you, because we're all on the same path. I've had life coaches in my world for years. I've spent a lot of time learning about myself because we really don't see ourselves accurately. So if there's things here that you're seeing and experiencing that would be valuable for you, if I can help you in any way, would love to help you. If you need something that I really can do for you, just connect with me. I also would encourage you at whatever level, wherever you're at, to reach out for help if it's really something that you're having a hard time breaking on and breaking away from, because any time that we are willing to ask for someone to help us, there's always great value with that. Again, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I dearly, dearly love you. I love deeply the ones that really care about who they are. And I know that there are people in your world that love you, but I do love you more than you know. And I so appreciate you being here with me. And I hope that the rest of your day and whatever you do with what you're learning will truly make an impact on your life. And I will see you again sometime soon.